Paul Heyman just crossed the most disgusting line in WWE history and Seth Rollins is ready to commit murder. What happened backstage at Monday Night Raw is not entertainment. This is not compelling television. This is sexual harassment caught on camera, and the fact that WWE aired this footage, the fact that they're promoting this incident, and the fact that Paul Heyman hasn't been fired immediately shows you everything that's wrong with WWE's toxic corporate culture. Paul Heyman kissed Becky Lynch backstage without her consent, and Seth Rollins witnessed the entire disgusting encounter and absolutely lost his mind. Let me be absolutely crystal clear before we go any further. This isn't about a storyline. This isn't about generating heat for a character. This is about a real person, Paul Heyman, committing an act that in any other workplace in America would result in immediate termination and potential legal action. The fact that WWE is treating this as an angle instead of the serious violation it actually is should make every single person furious. Here's exactly what happened, and I'm going to give you every disgusting detail because WWE is trying to downplay the severity of this situation. Becky Lynch was backstage in catering, having a conversation with several other wrestlers about an upcoming match. She was minding her own business, doing her job, being professional. That's when Paul Heyman walked into the area. Now, according to multiple witnesses who were present, Heyman had been drinking. His breath smelled of alcohol, his movements were slightly unsteady, and his behavior was more aggressive than usual. Heyman approached Becky and started making comments about her appearance. He said things like, "You're looking particularly ravishing tonight," and "The tribal chief has noticed how beautiful you are." Becky, being the professional she is, tried to brush off these comments. She gave polite but firm responses, clearly trying to de-escalate the situation and get away from Heyman. But Heyman persisted. He moved closer to her, invading her personal space. Other wrestlers in the area noticed what was happening and started to feel uncomfortable. That's when Paul Heyman, this disgusting, perverted old man, grabbed Becky Lynch by the shoulders and forcibly kissed her on the lips. Not on the cheek, not a friendly peck, but a full kiss on the mouth. Becky immediately pushed him away, looking absolutely shocked and violated. Her face went from confusion to anger in a split second. And that's exactly when Seth Rollins walked into catering. Seth saw Paul Heyman with his hands on his wife. He saw Becky pushing Heyman away. He saw the uncomfortable looks on everyone's faces. And Seth exploded with a rage that witnesses described as terrifying and like nothing they'd ever seen before. Seth charged at Paul Heyman like a man possessed. He grabbed Heyman by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Seth was screaming in Heyman's face, saying things that had to be bleeped out for television. Witnesses say Seth was yelling, "What did you just do to my wife? Are you out of your mind? I'm going to end you." It took 5 security guards to pull Seth off of Paul Heyman. Seth was trying to break free, trying to get back to Heyman to finish what he started. Becky was crying, both from the violation she just experienced and from seeing her husband in such a state of rage. The entire catering area was in chaos. And here's where this gets even more infuriating. Roman Reigns showed up. The tribal chief himself came to catering, and instead of condemning Heyman's actions, instead of apologizing to Becky and Seth, Roman defended Heyman. He told Seth to calm down and said that Heyman didn't mean anything by it and that Seth was overreacting. Overreacting? A man just sexually assaulted Seth's wife and Roman thinks Seth is overreacting? This tells you everything you need to know about Roman Reigns' character. He values his special counsel more than he values doing what's right. He'd rather protect a sexual predator than stand up for what's decent and moral. Seth responded by getting in Roman's face and telling him that if Roman didn't get Heyman out of his sight immediately, he was going to put both of them in the hospital. The tension was so thick that everyone thought fists were about to fly between Seth and Roman. Eventually, Roman led Heyman away, but not before Heyman had the audacity to smirk at Seth as he was leaving. Now let's talk about Becky Lynch's reaction because she's the victim in this situation and her voice matters more than anyone else's. After the incident, Becky immediately went to WWE management to file a formal complaint. She demanded that Paul Heyman be suspended, fined, or fired for his actions. She made it clear that what happened was not okay and that she felt violated and disrespected. And you want to know what WWE management told her? According to sources close to the situation, Triple H and the HR department told Becky that they would look into it but that they needed to consider all sides of the story. What other side is there? Multiple people witnessed Heyman kiss Becky without consent. This isn't a he said she said situation. This is a clear-cut case of sexual harassment. But here's the real reason WWE isn't taking immediate action. Paul Heyman is too valuable to the company. He's Roman Reigns' special counsel. He's a crucial part of the Bloodline storyline, which is WWE's biggest draw. WWE is willing to overlook sexual harassment because they don't want to disrupt their most profitable angle. That's disgusting. This is the same pattern we've seen in WWE for decades. When someone in a position of power or someone who's valuable to the company crosses a line, WWE protects them. They minimize the situation, they sweep it under the rug, they hope people forget about it. But this time is different because this happened on camera and it can't be hidden. Let's examine Paul Heyman's history because this is not the first time he's been accused of inappropriate behavior toward women. If you go back through his career, if you talk to women who've worked with him in ECW, in WWE, in various promotions, you'll hear stories. Stories about unwanted comments, stories about inappropriate touching, stories about Heyman abusing his position of authority. But Heyman has always been protected because he's considered a genius and a legend in the wrestling business. His creative contributions have given him a shield against accountability. WWE has turned a blind eye to his behavior for years because he makes them money and enhances their top star. Well, that protection should end right now. Paul Heyman should be fired immediately. Not suspended, not fined, fired. He should face legal consequences for his actions. And WWE should issue a public apology to Becky Lynch for putting her in a position where she had to experience this violation. But that won't happen because WWE is more concerned with protecting their bottom line than protecting their female wrestlers. They'll probably turn this into a storyline where Seth Rollins feuds with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman, completely glossing over the fact that a real assault took place. Let's talk about Seth Rollins' position in all of this because he's in an impossible situation. Seth is rightfully furious about what happened to his wife. He wants justice. He wants Heyman punished. But WWE is probably pressuring him to work with this situation, to turn his real anger into a storyline that makes the company money. Seth has every right to refuse. He has every right to say, "I'm not turning my wife's assault into entertainment." He has every right to demand that Heyman be removed from WWE before he agrees to continue working. But WWE will probably dangle main event opportunities in front of him, promise him championship matches, do whatever it takes to get him to play ball. And if Seth does refuse to work with this situation, WWE will probably bury him. They'll take him off television, they'll feed him to other wrestlers in losing efforts, they'll make an example of him to show other wrestlers what happens when you don't cooperate. That's how WWE operates. They punish people for having principles. Here's what makes this situation even more disgusting. The way WWE filmed and edited this segment shows that they're treating it as entertainment. They had multiple camera angles. They included dramatic music. They cut together the footage to maximize the shock value. They're treating a sexual assault like it's just another wrestling angle. This is exploitation of a real victim. Becky Lynch didn't consent to being kissed, and now WWE is using that violation to generate ratings and social media buzz. They're profiting off of Becky's trauma. How is that okay? How does anyone at WWE sleep at night knowing they're doing this? And the worst part? There are fans defending this. There are people on social media saying it's just a work, or this is what wrestling is, or Becky agreed to this storyline. Those people are part of the problem. They're enabling WWE's toxic behavior. They're making excuses for sexual harassment because they want to be entertained. Let me be absolutely clear, even if Becky Lynch agreed to participate in a storyline involving a kiss, which we have no confirmation of, the way this was executed crossed multiple lines. Wrestling storylines involving romance or physical contact are supposed to be choreographed and consensual. What we saw on camera looked spontaneous, aggressive, and non-consensual. If this was scripted, then WWE's creative team should be ashamed of themselves for writing something so irresponsible. If this wasn't scripted, then Paul Heyman should be in jail. Either way, someone needs to be held accountable. Let's talk about the message this sends to other women in WWE. Female wrestlers are already dealing with enough challenges in a male-dominated industry. They have to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. They have to deal with constant scrutiny about their appearance. They have to fight for equal pay and equal opportunities. And now they have to worry about being sexually harassed by WWE executives and on-air talent without any consequences? What woman is going to feel safe working in WWE after seeing how this situation is being handled? What woman is going to speak up about inappropriate behavior when they see that the company protects the perpetrators instead of the victims? This is a hostile work environment. This is a company that clearly doesn't value or respect its female employees. This is a corporate culture that needs to be completely overhauled from the top down. Here's what should happen immediately: Paul Heyman should be terminated. WWE should issue a public statement condemning his actions. Becky Lynch should be compensated for the trauma she experienced. Seth Rollins should be given time off to support his wife. And WWE should implement mandatory sexual harassment training for everyone in the company. But here's what will happen: WWE will turn this into a storyline. They'll book Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman at ringside. They'll have Heyman cut promos trying to justify or minimize what he did. They'll make millions of dollars off of this situation while Becky's real trauma gets exploited for profit. Seth will probably be told that if he wants to main event WrestleMania, he needs to work through this situation. Roman will be positioned as the villain who defends Heyman's actions. And the whole thing will be presented as just another chapter in WWE's never-ending content machine. The hypocrisy of WWE's current leadership is staggering. Triple H has talked about creating a better WWE, a company that respects its talent and does things differently than the Vince McMahon era. But this situation proves that nothing has changed. The same toxic culture exists, just with different people in charge. If Triple H actually cared about creating a respectful workplace, he would have immediately fired Paul Heyman. No investigation needed when you have video evidence. No considering all sides when witnesses can confirm what happened. Just swift, decisive action to show that sexual harassment won't be tolerated. But Triple H is protecting Heyman because Heyman is valuable to the Bloodline storyline. The Bloodline makes WWE money, and money is more important than morals to WWE's leadership. That's the harsh reality that we all need to accept. Let's talk about the legal implications because Becky Lynch would be completely justified in filing a lawsuit against Paul Heyman and WWE. What happened constitutes sexual assault and battery. It happened in the workplace. It was perpetrated by someone in a position of authority. And the company has failed to adequately respond. Any employment lawyer would jump at the chance to take this case. The evidence is overwhelming. The damages are clear. And WWE's handling of the situation shows a pattern of negligence and possibly even retaliation if they pressure Becky to participate in a storyline exploiting her assault. But filing a lawsuit would probably end Becky's WWE career. WWE would make her life miserable. They'd bury her character, take away her opportunities, and make it clear that she's being punished for not playing ball. That's how WWE treats people who stand up for themselves. So Becky is stuck in an impossible position: either stay silent and allow herself to be exploited, or speak up and risk her career. That's not a choice anyone should have to make. That's the definition of a hostile work environment. Here's what makes me furious about the fan reaction. Instead of uniting to demand accountability, wrestling fans are divided. Some are defending WWE, some are defending Heyman, some are saying Becky is working everyone by pretending to be upset. These people have lost their ability to distinguish between storyline and reality. This is real. A real woman was really assaulted. Her real husband really witnessed it. Their real marriage is really being affected by this. But fans are so conditioned to view everything through the lens of "is this a work?" that they can't recognize genuine harm when it's right in front of them. Social media has been flooded with hot takes from people who weren't there, who don't know what really happened, but who have strong opinions anyway. Some are calling for Heyman's firing, which is correct, but others are making jokes, creating memes, treating this like it's just another wrestling controversy. That's sick. Let's address Roman Reigns' role more deeply because his defense of Paul Heyman reveals his true character. Roman has positioned himself as the tribal chief, the head of the table, the leader of his family. But a real leader doesn't protect predators. A real leader holds people accountable when they cross lines. By defending Heyman, Roman has shown that loyalty to his inner circle is more important than doing what's right. He's shown that he values his storyline more than the well-being of his fellow wrestlers. He's shown that he's willing to enable sexual harassment if it serves his interests. This should destroy Roman's babyface credibility with fans. How can anyone cheer for someone who defends a sexual predator? How can anyone view Roman as a hero when he's actively protecting someone who assaulted a fellow wrestler? If fans have any morals, they'll boo Roman out of every arena until he changes his stance. But fans probably won't do that because they're so invested in Roman's character, so committed to the Bloodline storyline, that they'll make excuses for him. They'll say it's just his character or he's playing a heel. But there are some things that transcend character work. Some things are just wrong regardless of whether you're a heel or a babyface. Here's my prediction for how this plays out, and I hope I'm wrong. WWE is going to position this as a forbidden attraction storyline. They're going to have Paul Heyman continue to make comments about Becky. They're going to have Roman make suggestions about Becky acknowledging the tribal chief. And Seth is going to be the jealous, angry husband fighting to defend his wife's honor. It's going to be gross. It's going to be exploitative. It's going to reduce Becky from being the man and a top star to being a prop in a storyline between the men in her life. Her agency, her career, her accomplishments will all be diminished so that WWE can sell tickets to see Seth fight Roman. And when this storyline inevitably culminates at WrestleMania or another major pay-per-view, WWE is going to act like they told a great story. They're going to pat themselves on the back for creating compelling television. They're going to count their money and ignore the very real harm they caused. I want to know what you think about this disgusting situation. Do you think Paul Heyman should be fired immediately? Do you think Becky Lynch should file a lawsuit? Do you think Seth Rollins should refuse to work until Heyman is removed? Do you think Roman Reigns is complicit for defending Heyman's actions? Comment below and let me know. Should there be a boycott of WWE until they handle this situation properly? Should sponsors be contacted and informed about WWE's handling of sexual harassment? Should the wrestling media be pressuring WWE for answers instead of just reporting the storyline aspects? Tell me what actions you think need to be taken. This is one of the most serious and disturbing situations in WWE history. Paul Heyman kissed Becky Lynch without consent backstage at Raw, Seth Rollins rightfully lost his mind, and WWE is trying to turn a real assault into entertainment. This is wrong on every level. This is exploitation. This is harassment. This is a company showing its true colors. Hit that like button if you think Paul Heyman should be fired. Share this video with everyone who needs to understand what really happened. Subscribe to WrestlingNewsCC for coverage that isn't afraid to call out WWE's toxic behavior. And drop a comment demanding accountability from WWE. Becky Lynch deserves justice. Seth Rollins deserves support. Paul Heyman deserves consequences. And WWE deserves to be held accountable for creating and perpetuating a workplace where sexual harassment is tolerated and even exploited for profit. This is a dark day for professional wrestling, and it's time for everyone, fans, wrestlers, media, sponsors, to demand better from WWE. The wrestling industry has a long history of tolerating inappropriate behavior, of protecting powerful men, of silencing victims. That pattern must end here. This situation needs to be a turning point where we finally say enough. Where we finally demand that wrestling companies treat their employees with dignity and respect. Where we finally hold predators accountable regardless of their value to the company. WrestlingNewsCC will continue to follow this story and demand answers from WWE. We will not let this be swept under the rug. We will not allow WWE to exploit Becky's trauma for storyline purposes. We will not stop talking about this until Paul Heyman faces real consequences for his actions. This is about more than wrestling, this is about basic human decency and creating safe workplaces for everyone. Stay tuned for updates because this story is far from over.